Today, we're looking at something pretty heavy coming out of Canada. We're talking about two major crises that, on the surface, seem totally separate. But what if they're not? What if they're actually part of the exact same story? So that really brings us to the big question we're tackling today. Is it even possible that these two huge problems, the ones facing Canada's Indigenous peoples and the ones facing its younger generations, could actually come from the same place? Are they telling the same story? All right, so first things first, we've got to get a handle on just how big these two realities are. You've got one crisis that's steeped in a really long, painful history, and then you've got another one, a crisis of well-being that's hitting people who are really just beginning their adult lives. Let's kick things off with a number that, honestly, it's hard to even wrap your head around: 290. The rate of tuberculosis among the Inuit community in Canada is 290 times higher than for non-Indigenous Canadians. A number like that isn't just a data point, right? It's a massive red flag screaming about some really deep systemic problems in healthcare. Okay, now let's switch gears and look at that second crisis. This chart here, wow, it shows mental well-being scores across different age groups. And the difference is it's stark. Look at this. People over 55, they're scoring around a 98 on this scale, which is pretty healthy. But young adults from 18 to 34, they're down at 38. That is a massive, massive gap. It's telling us that an entire generation is really, really struggling. So, where does the Indigenous crisis come from? Well, it's the direct result of a really long, painful history of harm. You have the residential school system, which the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called a cultural genocide, something that inflicted a soul wound on generations. And it didn't stop there. You had the 60s scoop, and now what some are calling the millennial scoop, where there are actually more Indigenous kids in the child welfare system today than were in residential schools at their peak. And the fallout from all this, it's just devastating. Suicide rates are up to 10 times higher, and there's ongoing systemic neglect. We're talking poor housing, not enough food, and even a lack of clean drinking water on some reserves. And at the same time, you see this parallel crisis happening with Canada's youth. The numbers are just staggering. We're talking about 1.6 million kids with a diagnosed mental health challenge. For young people aged 15 to 34, suicide is the second leading cause of death. And globally, something like 41% of adults under 35 say they're distressed or struggling. They're dealing with overwhelming guilt, fear, anxiety, even feeling detached from reality. So you've got these two different groups, but they're both experiencing this incredible level of suffering. So how in the world are these two stories connected? Well, the whole idea we're exploring here is that they share a common root. There's a mechanism, a way that pain and trauma can actually be passed down through generations. And that connecting thread has a name: intergenerational trauma. What does that mean? It's basically the idea that massive trauma experienced by a whole group of people doesn't just affect them. It creates this emotional and psychological wound that echoes down through the generations. The key thing to get here is that the wounds of the past don't just vanish. In a very real way, they're inherited. There's a quote from the Journal of Aboriginal Health that just nails it. It says that the effects of trauma can be passed down from parents to their kids, just like knowledge and culture are passed down. And this isn't just some poetic idea, It's a real psychosocial process. It affects how people parent, how children form attachments. It can even change our neurobiology. So, if you boil it all down to one simple idea, it's this: trauma is the breakdown of connection. That's it. It's about losing your connection to family, to your culture, to your community, and even to yourself. And when you look at it that way, you can see that both the Indigenous crisis and the youth crisis are, at their very core, crises of disconnection. And this idea, this core problem of disconnection, it really helps you understand why the usual government approaches just don't seem to work. They often struggle, right? Because on one hand, you have these big top-down systems that were often built on a colonial framework. They can be culturally unaware, they can even re-traumatize people, and that just creates massive distrust. And then on the other hand, you have what communities are actually asking for, what they need: a focus on healing, the right to self-determination, and support that's culturally appropriate. All things that are designed to rebuild connection. Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, I know, but here's the turn. This is not a story without hope. Because if the problem at its root is a breakdown of connection, well, then the antidote has to be connection, right?
And the good news is the science on this is incredibly clear. The place to start, the foundation for building a healthier society, is something called nurturing care. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's about creating an environment for kids that's safe, that's supportive, and that's responsive to their needs. We're talking about the whole package: good health, nutrition, safety, opportunities to learn. But the absolute key, the most important piece, is emotionally supportive relationships. And it's not just a nice idea. You've got the heavy hitters, organizations like UNICEF, the World Bank. They are all in on this. They all agree that investing in the first few years of a child's life is not just a nice thing to do. It actually has the highest rate of return of pretty much any social investment you can make. It sets people up for a lifetime of better health and well-being. And this all circles back to something fundamental about our own biology. Our brains are social brains. We are literally primed for connection, not isolation. Our brains are wired for relationships, and they develop through our interactions with other people. So when you have isolation and disconnection, you're going against the very blueprint of how we're designed to function and to thrive.
So the big question is, who makes this change happen? And the answer is, it's not just one group. It has to be a whole bunch of people. It's Indigenous communities leading the way with self-determination and culturally informed healing. It's non-governmental organizations or NGOs running targeted programs that we know work. It's public-private partnerships bringing in resources, and even social franchises expanding access to great care. But maybe most importantly, it's individuals and families. It's all of us creating these nurturing environments from the ground up.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. If the antidote to all this is connection, and the foundation is nurturing care, what's the actual engine driving it all? Well, you can really boil it down to one single, incredibly powerful word: love.
Yeah, I know, it sounds a little soft, maybe. But let's get serious for a second and ask a really big question. What is the evolutionary purpose of love? I mean, why did we, as a species, even evolve this emotion? The answer is pretty amazing, actually. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a core survival strategy. Think about it. Love is what fosters the trust and cooperation that let our ancestors survive in groups. It's what creates the secure bond needed to raise human babies who are uniquely helpless for so long. It encourages fathers to stick around and invest in their kids. Some scientists even think that the loving bond between a mother and her child is where language itself was born. In fact, one evolutionary biologist, E. Brunot, makes this incredible argument that love is, wait for it, the main physiological driving force behind the entire evolution of humanity. It's the secret sauce that allowed us to become the cooperative, social, and intelligent species that we are. And that brings us right back to the central idea here. It's not a vicious cycle of trauma, but a virtuous cycle of flourishing. It all starts with nurturing care and secure attachment, which are really just expressions of love, right? That helps create individuals who are resilient and can flourish. And what do those people do? They go on to build stronger families and stronger communities. And what do those strong communities do? They create the perfect environment to provide nurturing care for the next generation. You see how it works? It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of well-being. And the end goal of this amazing cycle is what we call flourishing. But it's really important to know that flourishing isn't just about feeling happy. It's much bigger than that. It's a state where all aspects of your life are good. And that includes the community and the society you live in. It's about the whole person being able to live a whole good life. So the big vision here is it's actually both incredibly simple and incredibly profound. We have the science. We have the evolutionary blueprint. We literally have the tools to build what some have called a civilization of love, a society that's intentionally designed to create the connections that allow every single person to flourish. And that really brings us to the final takeaway, the solution to these huge generational crises. It's not just about some new government policy. It's about practice. It's something we do. It's about actively fostering connection in our own families, in our schools, where we work, in our communities, which really leaves us all with a final question to think about. How can each of us in our own lives contribute to building that civilization of love?